So good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Krysia Solheim. I'm a Global Account Director at Zoomo, and I'll let Michael introduce Zoomo in a moment. Panelists, please join. So morning, everyone. Our panel topic today is delivering on the potential of cargo bikes for business. We hear a lot about all of the potential of transitioning last mile delivery and the mobile workforce to cargo bikes. But what does that actually mean in terms of implementation and real life? Is the sector still facing significant barriers? Do we already have all the answers? Is it just a matter of time? Basically, what's going on and where are we going? So with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists who are going to help us dig into that. And there will be time from everybody for questions from everybody in the audience. I know you guys are going to have so many. I'm just going to start off with introducing everyone quickly. Actually, I will let you all introduce yourselves. Starting off with MJ, co-founder and Chief Revenue Officer of Zoomo. Can you give us a brief introduction to Zoomo, please?
Yes, hello. Can you guys hear me? It's really loud over here. Okay, cool. Just keep talking. Michael Johnson, the co-founder, one of the co-founders of Zoomo. We are a fleet solutions provider for light electric vehicles. So if you want a cargo bike to do commercial delivery and you want someone to just take care of everything for you, procurement, financing, servicing, the whole shebang, that's what we do. And we're big on cargo bikes for delivery.
And next we have Francesca Miazzo. Did I pronounce that well? Co-founder and CEO of Foodlogica. Tell us a little bit about Foodlogica.
Yes, hi, hello everybody. Foodlogica is a logistic company. We focus on the food and beverage market, and we've been employing cargo bikes since 2017-16 to deliver food in the city center. We started with a normal cargo bike, and now we use cargo bikes with fridge on them. That's what we do. And there are a lot of challenges, of course, so I can't wait to share everything with you.
Great. Next, Adam Barmby, from founder and CEO at EAV. What is EAV?
Hi, I'm Adam Barmby. EAV is a company that specializes in urban transport design. So we make a cargo bike. There's actually one over there. And I'd invite everyone to come and have a go with it today. It's sporting a nice Royal Mail Post Office livery today. So come and have a ride.
And not to plug you, but I think you just won Cargo Bike of the Year.
We may have.
No big deal. And finally, we've got Sam Pierce, project manager at Cycling Industries Europe. Tell us a little bit about how CIE is involved in the B2B side of cargo bikes.
Great, thanks, Krysia. So Cycling Industries Europe represents the cycling ecosystem in Europe. So we have obviously big name manufacturers who are part of our membership. Going right down to developers of apps for connected cycling. So as I said, that full ecosystem approach. And we are the conveners also of the Cargo Bike and Cyclogistics Expert Group, European Cargo Bikes and Cyclogistics Expert Group. So that brings together companies working specifically on cargo bikes and cyclogistics, and also bring together the cyclogistics federations and associations in Europe to talk about issues specific to that area of logistics. Look forward to speaking a bit more about that with everyone today.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So we've got a cargo bike manufacturer, an organization that lobbies on behalf of the industry for policies at the EU level, a logistics company that is using cargo bikes for last mile delivery, and then a company that's providing financing, maintenance, and fleet solutions for companies that have fleets, which I think is a good representation of the types of organizations that are really needed to scale the sector seriously. So I'd love to start off by building a picture of how delivering the business side of cargo bikes actually works. So Sam, can you give us a bit of the lay of the land from the European perspective? Where are we? How is the EU supporting or not supporting the development of cargo bikes for business?
Yeah. So I think the EU is doing what it can. I mean, most of you would have probably heard recently about the European Cycling Declaration. big document that came out, big commitment from European institutions to support cycling moving forward as part of obviously the Green Deal, the Fit for 55 package, a number of other policies aimed at greening and decarbonising Europe. And yes, this cycling declaration really puts cycling on a level playing field with other modes of mobility. It's not just, cycling is an activity that people do on the side, recreation or whatever. This is really talking about cycling as a fully fledged mode of transport, as supporting the cycling industry scale in terms of jobs, skilling up people within the cycling industry to deliver higher spec bikes, and improve industry more generally, processes and supply chain. Really also infrastructure, putting in place thinking that puts active mobility and cycling essentially at the center of good urban planning, and trying to promote that through a number of instruments, which I'll speak about a bit later. But I think that's sort of that document, which was released about a month ago, is really, I think, a real high point in cycling advocacy for Europe. And we'll see more and more commitment coming from the European institutions themselves, but also at the local and regional level for more cycling policy more policy that favors cycling.
Right. So we've got the basic regulatory foundation for the sector to exist. And now, Adam, that's where you come in. Give us a taste of what it's like to manufacture cargo bikes in Europe. We're seeing a resurgence for this push for local manufacturing and being a bit more conscientious about the life cycle of vehicles. But, what does that actually entail and what does that mean? I can imagine in some cases that, you're actually reinventing the wheel.
Yes, literally, you do have to design pretty much every component on the vehicle. And it's bloody difficult. So, we get to the point where we've got a vehicle that is usable and it's robust enough to go into operation, but then it's got to last the test of time. So you've got to then start looking at how you cost down, how you make sure that it lasts a period of time so that you can get your residual value up from a financing perspective. And we've spent the last 5 years of basically living in pain, fixing bikes, making sure that they're on the road, and that's why we sort of partnered with Zoomo as well, have really helped us do that much better than we could look after the customers. And what that's led to is a second generation bike now that is, it's 95% content change. We've had to engineer everything from the wheel right the way up to the bodywork to get the cost down, to get the weight down, to get the load carrying capability up. And ultimately, these things, they're not looked after. They are completely and utterly abused on a sort of minute basis. We calculate that there's about a curb strike every 3 to 5 minutes in London on 250 of our bikes. So we've been through a lot of wheels, and that's why we've had to engineer parts like that to be far more, structurally sound than what was already available on the market. So it's been difficult, but I think it's something that I don't think I'm preaching to the converted here. This is something that the world needs, and we really want to produce a vehicle that can decarbonize our urban centres and do it quickly, and try and meet the government's targets without just sort of electrifying legacy vehicles.
Is there an external push that is leading you to manufacture in the UK, or what are the benefits there or the downsides?
There's a massive downside to manufacturing in the UK. It's really difficult. It's virtually impossible to import anything. So what we've done is we've flat packed our design, so we can ship all of our chassis in 300 millimeters of space, which means that we can then do the final 15% of assembly in the local country origin of sale, which means that we can then use dealer networks, distribution partners like Zoomo again, to do that last 15% of the assembly. And one of the biggest differences there is you can either get 8 of our bikes fully built in a 40-foot container, or you can get 56 part-built ones. So everything nests, everything is flat packable, and everything is modular. So you can set the vehicle to be built for that current environment where it's being sold.
So next is Zoomo. MJ, Zoomo is really pulling together some of the kind of key operational pieces to make it as easy as possible for companies who may not, be all about bikes to start using these vehicles. So walk us through kind of everything that you're providing to companies, either directly or by bringing different services together. And we will touch on the maintenance bit a little further on, but yeah.
So as I say, Zoomo is a more of an integrator, one-stop shop. This ecosystem for cargo bikes for delivery is so nascent that we've actually ended up having to do a lot of the things ourselves. So if there were lots of service providers out there, we probably would have outsourced more of it by now and become more of a financing platform. But we've fallen into servicing because that's what people need and that's what people want. And it's been one of our rights to win. So we do everything, and ultimately, customers care about three things. They care about costs, quality, time, which in this space translates to the price, the all-in price for the bike, including servicing, the spec of the vehicle. Does it do what I need it to do? And the time being the uptime. Is the vehicle available when I need it, so I can do deliveries when I need to do it? I think again, everything is subscale, so everything is suboptimal. On the price side, there are times where you just have no choice but to use a bike or a cargo bike to do a delivery. Regulatory, no car zones, etc. But where there is a choice between a van and a car, that equation to use a cargo bike stacks up in relatively very few occasions right now. It has the potential to really flip in urban centers. And our estimate is about, I think we're about 50% too expensive right now overall as an ecosystem. That's going to be really easy to achieve in the next couple of years. Adam talked about flat packing his eaves. We currently get his eaves just built, which from Oxford to London's not too bad, but when you're sending it to Germany, Spain, France, which we are, it adds about 10% to the cost, which is a lot, especially when you're having to finance it. So price needs to come down, and it basically means where people are choosing to use cargo bikes, in a lot of times it's the company or the customers are having to invest a little bit and build the infrastructure and take and try and grow this program to a certain scale. On the spec side, Adam will talk more and more about this, but the pace of development has been rapid, but it's still got a bit to go. And we're not at the perfect vehicle yet, but I'm sure we'll get there in the next couple of years. That is just, can it carry what you need to carry? Is it secure? Will my packages be stolen or not? The basic stuff you would expect. And then on the servicing side, which is actually where Zoomo is, I guess, more and more of an expert, at least relative up to this panel. Cargo bikes are not cars. Bikes break down, once a month. Cars break down once a year, if that. So there are more moving pieces. There's more operations involved. You can't just use a car mechanic or the car ecosystem that exists. We have to build our own, and that's what we're doing. And when everything's subscale, it's kind of little things like, can we go to Bristol or can we go to this far-flung city? We can't grow as fast as we want. We can't go to where all demand is right now. And again, that's just one of the blockers for customers who want that kind of like national option.
Thank you. And Francesca, you are a live example of a company that is actually using cargo bikes. And I'm sure we'd all love to hear a lot more about the Foodlogica journey. So maybe just to start us off, why did you start using cargo bikes and how did you even choose a bike?
Yeah, that's a question I ask myself every morning. We started mostly our idea of creating Foodlogica comes from a very sustainability and mission-oriented angle. So we did an analysis through a foundation of the local food system in Amsterdam, and we saw that there was a lot of innovation in sustainability, but when it comes to transport, it was quite poor. So we said, why don't we try to do something ourselves? So we did, and the most obvious object to use, in my opinion, in a city that is full of bike infrastructures for short distance transport is a cargo bike. At the time, I didn't know that if you transport food, you need to have refrigeration and a lot of other things that came in through the life of the company. But it was pretty obvious to us to start with a cargo bike. And actually, the first one we got an extremely cheap cargo bike from China, and it broke 2 meters after we started, and then we came to one of those fairs 10 years ago almost, and we got our first bikes there, and then we continued the journey. Yeah.
And so you have certain cities that you have cargo bikes and
and
e-vans.
I have different kinds of vehicles at the moment because you use a cargo bike for short distance inner city distribution. I think is the most efficient solution if you have bike infrastructures for parcel and small, like for example, meal delivery or fast caterings is. The courier express business has been there since ever, and this is just the next step. But when it comes to delivering a little bit outside the city center or within cities or throughout the whole metropolitan area, we started to get bigger vehicles like small minivans and caddies and transporters. So you have to adapt a bit your fleet with the needs of the distance, and the volumes are define that part.
And I think we'd be really interested to hear, how does planning the delivery and operations differ between vans and cargo bikes? So are you using the same software or route planning? How are you doing that?
Yeah, we use the same software. It's a volume and a distance indicator, let's say. Yeah.
And is that something that already exists out there, or you developed yourself? Or?
No, we didn't develop ourselves. There is a software that we use, and there are many softwares. I don't think I can give like a recommendation here because everybody uses a different one. Especially if you only use bikes, you have to use this bike software.
So you do need to differentiate.
If you use everything, you need to use a software that can do everything. So there are a lot of, depends what somebody does. It's very specific.
Right. So now moving into the maintenance bit, how have you approached maintenance? Are you doing it in-house? Do you contract it out? What are your challenges?
At the beginning, from urban planner, became entrepreneur. I became a bike mechanic. For the first 3 years, I was just repairing bikes. It was interesting. I couldn't find anybody helping us. We found several people that tried to help us and gave up after a couple of months. And eventually, we found this very nice company. It's called Go Bike Service, and they supply all the companies in the Netherlands, and I think now they are also at the European level with the on-site service. So or also if you have a problem in the streets, they come and help. So we went from internal to external service. And when these guys set up this company, I told them if I would be an entrepreneur today, I would do that, because that's what everybody's building bikes, but nobody is servicing them. And if you have a business, you need a service. Like that's what happens in the other pavilion. Everybody has like a very big network of support.
You should do that.
Yeah, and MJ, maybe I know you spoke a little bit about the difficulties of a company like Zoomo or any other maintenance company, but when it comes to maintaining fleets of a lot of different types of cargo bikes, let's talk through a little bit more of the difficulties there.
Yeah, I said I was an expert in servicing, but I can't actually change a tire in under 10 minutes. Sounds like you might be more than me. So when it comes to servicing, there's a bit of an education piece, and I don't mean that in a patronizing way. I mean that in like if you've been dealing with vans before cargo bikes, your expectation is that the uptime is around 95, 99%, and they expect the same for cargo bikes, and because of the breakage rate, it never works like that. And if you actually want a 99% uptime, you just need to order more bikes, so you end up at the same place. And if you try and get more uptime out of the same fleet, it's just super expensive. So we start there. We try and convince people that aim for about an 80% uptime. Then the next thing we solve is parts. Now, obviously, this is again nascent industry, nascent supply chain. You want to make sure you have 2 or 3 months worth of parts, because those supply chains are not as mature as the auto supply chain, and you can't take if you want your vehicles to be on the road, you do need to store parts. That's where Zoomo, because we have access to financing, we're able to do that. And then there's the servicing itself. I said cargo bikes are not cars, but they're also not they're not bikes either. You do need specific training, and in some countries like Germany, of course, you need specific qualifications. And there just isn't the scale of mechanics available out there. And again, so we do a lot of the training ourselves in house. Has kind of fallen into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole topic of bike mechanics in general in Europe is a hot topic, and is a question for you, maybe Sam. I don't know. Do you guys do much work in terms of developing the training for mechanics, not necessarily cargo bike specific, but just in general, since that seems to be a pain point in a lot of different places?
We don't have anything like that set up at the moment, but with the sort of, one obvious thing is that there is this electrification of the vehicle fleet, the car fleet happening in Europe. That is something that will have a big impact on the automotive industry and the jobs from a lot of the OEM suppliers and the vehicle manufacturers themselves. There's going to be a huge amount of qualified mechanics and labor force on the market in the years to come. So I think there is a huge opportunity for the cycling industry to, as it scales and as the carrier cycle industry scales as well, look to those skills. There is some overlap, not all. There is obviously differences in the vehicle type, but obviously there is a sound mechanical knowledge required to work and service these vehicles. And I think there is a huge opportunity there. Then there's all sorts of European funding through things like Erasmus and other sort of funding programs that are on offer as well. And working with members, that's something that could develop in the future in terms of putting together, some sort of European project that would look to retool, part of the sector in that way. So it's definitely something that we're looking into at the moment too. But there are other priorities as well.
Absorb people from the dark side into the light. Yes, of course.
Exactly.
And Adam, I imagine that maintenance can make such a huge difference to vehicle lifespan. And from your perspective, a well-functioning vehicle keeps your customers coming back for more. So what kind of things are you doing from a manufacturer perspective to really reduce the need for maintenance? And what is it what parts is it that really make a difference, if there are?
So, from a first perspective, it's actually making sure that your warranty items aren't failing first and foremost. So the bike should work and operate. If you can get to the point where the bike doesn't break, effectively doing 7,000 to 10,000 miles per year in probably running 2 to 3 shifts per day, 6 days a week in London, we've ticked that box. We've got to that point now. The next phase is that we're now developing the bikes that can do between 10 and 20,000 miles service intervals. So no mean feat. Brake pads are, even on the bike we've got here today, they're bike brakes. So the brake pads will do 1,000 miles. That's just nowhere near good enough. We've had to engineer our own brake pads so they do 2,000 miles, which is not really that much of an upgrade. So we've just completely got rid of all of the bicycle components now. I don't think there are, other than pedals and cranksets and handlebars. there are no more bicycle components on the vehicle. It's all either bespoke made or scooter, mopeds, that sort of type componentry. And we're already working on and testing our EVE 2.2, as we describe it, which will do between 10 and 20,000 mile service intervals and be launched middle of next year. So,
And I appreciate.
And one really, really important point, and MJ will know this as well, it's really about making sure that you've got that residual value in the vehicle after the 3 years, 4 years, 5 year term, whatever your finance company is looking for. So we've worked really closely with the finance companies, people like Arval and Close Brothers, for example, to understand what it is they need from a TCO perspective to develop the bike so that it gets to the point where it ticks all those boxes. You get a much lower rate of finance on the vehicle, and then you get far larger adoption.
I imagine there's also kind of that tension between wanting to, the cargo bike sector from a manufacturing perspective is still quite young, and you're like very rapidly developing these new vehicles, and you want to be able to upgrade everything, but at the same time keep fleets that are already out there operational. And I can imagine sometimes that being a bit of a tension.
Yeah, we've probably in the last 5 years, we've upgraded every single bike maybe 10 times. It's cost us an absolute fortune, but early adopters, and we're all early adopters in this anyway, you've got to look after those people because they're the guys that are actually doing your R&D work for you. They're giving you the information and the data and the knowledge that you then need to then go and develop your products to be better. If you don't do that and you don't put the sweat in, you'll go out of business very quickly.
And I know it's rude to ask someone's age, but how old are your oldest cargo bikes that are still on the road?
Actually, I rode the first one we ever built the other day. It was 7 years old. It was actually before I started EVE. So
in bike years or in human years?
It was very creaky. It's like dog years. I think you've got to add 10 years to every 1 year of actual life. And
great. Well, why don't we start talking about funding and financing and subsidies? MJ, talk to us a little bit about how Zoomo is able to provide leasing solutions and some of the difficulties in doing that.
So getting finance for these new vehicle form factors is hard, and it normally if you can get it, it normally translates to a pretty high interest rate, especially at the moment. So we're looking at anything from 9 to 15%, and just to put that into context, if you're more at the 15% versus the 9%, it adds about £100 a month to one of these e-quads, which is a lot of money. It's like 20-25%. So you can imagine when interest rates come down, when lenders have seen these vehicles on the road for long enough, and they've seen that there is a second-hand resale market for them, or just the fact that they will last more than 5 years, 3 to 5 years, then all of a sudden those rates come down. You get some longer-term leases, and the whole cost of this operation comes right down. And that's all it is. It's time. It's proof that these things have a residual value. And we're talking like we could really knock off like 30 to 40% just from that alone.
And is there anything that the cargo bag industry, I guess aside from maintaining vehicles and creating long-lasting vehicles, that we can do to reduce those interest rates and convince the people giving us the money?
I'll probably keep saying this, but it ultimately comes down to someone somewhere investing, whether it's a government program that backs that residual value for a really small fee. There's a scheme in the UK called the RLS scheme, which basically does that. I don't know what it's like actually in other countries, or it's government grants. Super successful grant scheme in the UK last year. I didn't see anything in the new budget. Did you? No, unfortunately. It just takes someone to invest, and if it's not the government, I think especially while capital's tight in these next couple of years, I think it's got to be the big logistics players who probably can afford to scale this up. And if they do, and it gets to that sort of magic scale, I think everything comes down.
And Adam, just on that point of support, what do you think is actually more important for your growth? Is it actually direct funding and support for development for EVE or as a manufacturer, or is it subsidies to the companies who are buying EVEs?
I think it's just adoption rates. The investment market's absolutely dead. You can't raise money to do anything really at the moment, and whether that be government or private equity. Really, it's about getting the adoption rates up, and that just correlates to doing more trials. Everyone wants to trial a bike. We don't have enough trial bikes to go around, but you've got to give someone the vehicle, and then you've got to go back to them with the data to prove why they can swap and sort of replace vans. And it's not necessarily 1-for-1 with everyone. FedEx is 5 bikes to 3 vans. Royal Mail's 2 bikes to 1 van. Every is 1 bike to 1 van, so that everyone's got a bit of a different swap rate.
And Francesca, so talking about full vehicle costs, I mean, initially you said you did this because, maybe it was a value-driven decision to start off with cargo bikes. But when you do compare the cost of operating vans versus bikes, is it more affordable yet? Is it not?
Yeah,
Are you doing
definitely more
Great.
affordable. We moved into operational leasing financing pretty soon, especially because otherwise you don't have the capital to grow, and that's working quite okay. It was difficult to find a company that would finance bikes, but eventually we managed. About subsidies, I remember back in the days there were subsidies from the municipality of Amsterdam for people to buy electric vans, and we didn't get it because we were buying electric bikes. Great. And so
But in terms, do you have the data in terms of per package? It is more affordable on a bike.
yeah, definitely.
Do you know what it is that makes the difference?
It's the price of the bike.
The price
And the price of the van. The leasing price per month is much cheaper. And even with the maintenance partner, the whole package is way cheaper than the van or even a minivan.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, of course, you have less volume that you can carry. So that's how we try to build a business plan around these 2 variables. So yeah, definitely cheaper. As I said, cheaper but way more efficient in the urban core. So you can deliver a lot of small packages with a bike much faster than with a big van. So that's where the magic happens.
And can you? I think you mentioned this previously, not on the panel, but you're in Amsterdam and in Paris and then also in Milan, but you don't have e-cargo bikes in Milan. You do it in Paris?
No.
Oh no! So literally only here.
I wanted to, but eventually we're actually closing down Paris.
Sorry. Because you can't make the finances work?
It's a very tough market there. We were not there. We spread ourselves a bit too thin, so we decided to focus on where there is more potential.
Fair.
Yeah.
So
But yes, in Milan, we didn't. We consciously decided not to buy bikes because there are no infrastructures, and of course, I'm from Milan, so I hear a lot of stories of people on bikes dying because it's very dangerous. The traffic is heavy. The air is extremely polluted. So I didn't feel as a company owner to tell somebody to go on a bike in Milan. For me, I would feel very bad. So we decided to go against. But for example, our manager used to be a bike messenger. So I don't know. It's we have that connection.
we're all rooting for Milan to develop more infrastructure. Sam, how well do you think governments across the EU are approaching this topic overall in terms of financial support? We do hear of certain countries in particular putting a good amount of support in terms of buying vehicles, but yeah, is that the best location? From all the feedback that you've had from the companies and the organizations that you work with, is that really where the funding is making a big difference? Ideally, where do you think that funding should be allocated, or how? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So I think, there are sort of a few elements to this. I mean, the first, it's been mentioned a couple of times, infrastructure. I mean, in terms of getting a greater adoption, the vehicles really have to prove themselves as, equivalent in, ideally as many use cases as vans are. I mean, if we can have a vehicle that can really just replicate a van, and do that, throughout the city and even into sort of suburban areas, then this is I think what we're all sort of working towards here, and I think government funding through two main areas of infrastructure can really enable that. The first sort of area of infrastructure is obviously cycle lanes, and this is where cargo bikes are able to derive a lot of their efficiency, being able to use the cycling infrastructure, and be able to deliver in pedestrianised zones and overtake cars stuck in congestion and traffic in cities, to be able to achieve that level of efficiency to make it a more competitive vehicle. And then I think there's a logistics infrastructure that sits behind that, in terms of the creation of and enabling urban space to be used for logistics and warehousing, and having micro hubs and consolidation centers throughout the city to enable that point-to-point delivery throughout a city, and be able to stock up at one center, then move to another part of the city, and be able to sort of close the loop. Because if you don't have that, then you are running something that's going to be very difficult to compete with very difficult to compete with vans. In terms of sort of access and funding, there are a number of initiatives throughout Europe, governments at the national, regional, and local level supporting businesses in the purchase of cargo bikes. The European Cyclist Federation has a very, very useful tool that allows you to see very easily, a dashboard essentially, that allows you to see what funding options are available in different parts of Europe, in different cities, in different countries, and goes into detail about what the funding and scheme is. Is it subsidy? Is it a tax rebate, stuff like that? So I think that's also a very useful tool for companies.
What's the name?
So it's it's organized, put together by our partners, ECF, European Cyclist Federation. I can provide you with the link afterwards. But it's essentially a dashboard that covers all cycling throughout Europe, and they have a special category for cargo bikes. So happy to share those details afterwards with anyone who's interested. And I think we will see more of this happening. There is policy coming from Europe now that's prioritizing this. There's something called Sustainable Urban Mobility Plans, and there's another fantastic European acronym called the TEN-T network, the Trans-European Transport Network, and this basically maps all the infrastructure throughout Europe: ports, inland waterways, highways, all of it. And essentially there are 424 cities on the TEN-T network. All those cities by 2025 have to have sustainable urban mobility plans. That is now sort of been enacted by European regulation. And those sustainable urban mobility plans are putting a big emphasis on active mobility, livable cities, putting humans at the center of the city as opposed to cars and traffic. So that is something that will take time, but I think there is a huge opportunity there. And then following on from my other point in terms of logistics infrastructure, equally there's a European tool called instrument called a SULP, very similar to a SUMP, but a Sustainable Urban Logistics Plan. And there too, that is at its infancy really at a sort of European policy level, but the idea and the thinking is there, and we are pushing for that to become a mandatory obligation on cities in the next review of that regulation. So, things will change. It does take time. Infrastructure is one of those, putting it in, getting it approved, planning it. It takes a lot of time. But I think we have got that momentum now, there has been this sort of, I think, general awakening of the need to do that, and I think cargo bikes also provide a really important use case in the sense that it's a commercial activity. A business is relying on that infrastructure to derive a profit and to make that economy grow and provide jobs. And while it's extremely important to provide people access to that infrastructure for commuting and leisure purposes and everything, adding that extra layer of commercial viability, I think, is a really important factor that does need to be calculated into those planning calculations more and more now. So I think there's a lot to look forward to there.
Yeah, and moving into that kind of regulatory infrastructure side of it, Adam, you're a British company that is trying to, export more and more also into Europe. But how difficult is it to build a vehicle that is compliant in a lot of just European countries? And what do you think, we should be standardizing and regulating? And what do you think we should leave up to the manufacturers?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few working groups that I've been involved in over the past years trying to put this together. And the fact of the matter is, everyone wants what they want, and I don't really care. I want to build something that is just going to decarbonize our urban environments. This is less about each individual cargo bike company sort of saying, oh, well, I want it to be a quarter of a ton, I want it to be 750 kilos. It should be a low amount of weight. I think the Dutch rules that are coming out are probably the best rules. But literally in the next 2-3 months, we've got 3 tests we've got to go and do just to be considered for the Amazon tender for the cargo bike. So it's going to cost us a considerable amount of money to go and do 3 tests that aren't even legally required yet. So I think as soon as there's an EU-wide legislation, it'll be great, and I think it'll also start governing the safety on cargo bikes as well, to make sure that they're built and fit for purpose so that they can't hurt people, and B, segregate from a normal bicycle, because let's face it, if there's a half a ton cargo bike going down the road, it shouldn't really be with someone on a Brompton could basically get crushed by it. So I'm also confused as well by the trailer rules, and I don't know whether they are or aren't legal with and without a powered bike. There's lots of different sort of question marks around that. So I mean, I can't do anything. None of us can really do anything. Maybe you can do the most out of all of us here, but basically get them to hurry up.
Yeah.
No pressure, Sam. But yes, following up on that one, how likely is it you think that within the next, I don't know, year or so, that we'll have some amount of standardization that at least, doesn't fragment the manufacturers and having to provide, 10 different types of vehicles in Europe?
Yeah. No, I think there's an important discussion and distinction to be made there. I mean, so there's the standards, there's a CEN working group working on this right now, and they have been working on it for a number of years. I mean, it's a bit overdue now, the heavyweight carrier cycle standard, but I think they're just obviously trying to work through and get the most comprehensive standard that they can put together, and I think that is going to be really important for the design and technical specifications of heavyweight cargo bikes to improve things like manufacturing efficiencies, reliability, safety, and then there's a huge supply chain part that was mentioned earlier as well. And having those standards is going to sort of reduce the variability, the variables that can be sort of figured into the design of a cargo bike, and make the form a little bit more standardized, a little bit more formalized, and as I said, more efficient for industry to produce. The flip side of that is there's regulation, and that is separate. Some regulation does look quite closely at standards, but there can also be regulation that might disregard standards. And what we're seeing at the European level, regulations at the European level is also quite difficult, because there's a principle of subsidiarity in the European Union that says that the lowest level of government should have the say of how the city, or how that level of government governs itself. So what the European Commission does is it can create classifications for vehicles, and they've done that for e-bikes, for pedelecs, speed pedelecs, all that kind of stuff. And then at the local level, there is regulation put in according to that classification. So what we don't want to see is regulation coming in that removes the unique selling points of cargo bikes. Regulation that would stop cargo bikes being able to use cycling infrastructure or being able to enter pedestrianised zones. There's a question there around rider training and making sure that riders, professional. It's a professional occupation, and they know how to use the vehicle. They know how to ride in a way that is respectful of other road users and provides a good service to customers. And that's something that we are working on within our cyclologistics group. But in terms of that regulation, that can vary from city to city. And what we want to do is make sure that at least at the European level, the categorization of the cargo bike and the heavy cargo bike is uniform, and try to work through that categorization, make sure that throughout Europe there is the same harmonized regulation to support that vehicle. And as I said, to make sure that it doesn't lose its unique selling points.
And I can imagine also that in terms of infrastructure, depending on what the final vehicle overall looks like, some infrastructure is better or worse for that. And so, Francesca, you use the infrastructure here in the Netherlands. In general, it's quite good when we talk about infrastructure for bikes in Europe. But I think you mentioned previously that segregated bike lanes is actually what gives you a lot of the benefit. And in some cases, maybe there isn't the space for segregated bike lanes. And so does then the value proposition of cargo bikes, does it disappear? Is it?
Actually, my dream would be to have bike lanes for light electric vehicles, lanes for electric vehicles. I always say that, but it will never happen. But maybe the most efficient way would be to have not only bikes but also larger light electric vehicles to have their own segment in the street, and that would help with a lot of traffic issues. And segregated bike lanes definitely more safe and necessary I'm really concerned about safety, so I'm really happy that you mentioned that drivers need to get training. We do drivers trainings, but we have people that sometimes say, I don't want to drive a bike. I don't want a bike. I want a car. Okay. So it's still quite cultural, like the idea to go by yourself in traffic with a bike. Segregated, that's how you call it. Yeah, that's
Separated, a separate space specifically for bikes, and potentially not shared with people on little Bromptons or 8-year-old kids. It would probably be ideal. But obviously, issue with that is that it does take up a lot of space, right? You've got your pedestrians, you've got your normal bikes, you've got your commercial bikes, and we don't allow the car in. So, yes, of course.
I was there. Maybe starts on those hours. Thank you so much. What? I have a voice. My name is Pascal van der Noot from Willem Mondiaal. Why not share the road with cars? Because the speed in cities goes lower to 30 kilometers per hour. And there you can mix with your cargo bikes much easier, allowing cyclists like the little Bromptons that you're mentioning to use a cycle path. I call that acoustic bikes. So allow the acoustic bikes to be on the cycle path, and the others, and all the motors and all the bureaus and other small cars share that other part of the road that is now occupied by cars only.
I think the reality is they do use the road. I mean, in London there's very little cycling infrastructure. It's probably one of the worst cities in Europe for it. But I think we've seen a massive adoption of cargo bikes in London because you can go through the traffic, and that is where the advantage comes from. It's by not getting stopped in the same lane as a van. That is the biggest advantage. So it's fair. You can go on the road in the cycle lanes down pedestrian zones. One of the really big advantages that we've actually had from selling bikes is actually the lack of parking tickets. It's a huge cost. FedEx in London right now on average, get 2 car parking tickets per day per depot. So it's a huge cost.
Sam?
Yeah, and I think the cycle strat that has sort of been developed in the Netherlands, I think that is a really interesting way to redistribute space, redistribute street space in cities, and I think has some real potential for cargo bikes. Obviously, yeah, there's this concern about once you sort of do that, then the cargo bike might get stuck behind vehicle traffic, behind cars, behind things like that. So you lose out a bit of an efficiency there, but you do gain in safety, you gain in livability, you gain in, there's a couple around where I live and in Brussels, and they do function very well. I think parking as well is another area that really needs to be considered and factored into all this, making sure that there is loading bays available for cargo bikes, and allowing. I know I've heard stories about London where cargo bikes aren't allowed to go into loading bays of buildings because it's not considered a vehicle under the building regulations, and so the cargo bike has to go elsewhere, which is totally impractical in many cases. So there's more as the use cases sort of expand for these vehicles. There's more regulation that will need to change and find more ways to fit it into the system that we already have.
Thank you. And moving back towards what the customer wants, MJ, you talk to a lot of companies like Foodlogica every day. What is your sense on why they're considering cargo bikes? Is it because they want to reduce their emissions, because they have to? Why are they choosing to do it? And then when they choose not to, what is the main barrier? What is the reason that they're choosing not to do it?
So yeah, got to be careful. Like Francesca, more of an expert than me, but this is I can share some stories from other customers. So people use cargo bikes for, I think it's probably, I guess, 2 reasons. One is because you can't take a car where you want to deliver stuff. So car-free pedestrian zones. The other one is ultimately cost per drop. And we've mentioned a number of factors that go into that, from, apart from just the fuel savings, the speed to get to where you're delivering, but ultimately the stopping wherever you like. It's much easier to stop, get out the vehicle, get back in. We call that the hustle time. And we're talking like 30 seconds saved per drop, which really adds up when you're doing, 100 to 200 parcels a day. So it's because you have to, or it's because you choose to. There's probably a third reason, where if that equation doesn't work for cost per drop, there comes then a sort of a mission or some sort of reason to invest in that delivery. So yeah, you may want to be an all green cargo bike fleet to start with, and you will probably win a lot of business from the logistics players because you are a cargo bike only delivery service, and they want to increase the portion of those in their portfolio of the fleet. You may just be mission driven, or for the last couple of years you may have raised a lot of money from investors in the VC community, which allows you to kind of invest as well. And I think, as I was saying before, I think those VC dollars and those dollars that were easier to come by in the last few years, I think that is turning off a little bit. And I think we're now looking at the governments and the large logistics players to continue that investment and really sort of scale this up.
And if you think of all of those companies that realistically could transition to cargo bikes, what is your sense of the kind of commercial LEV opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, you can cut this how you like, but I mean, we talk about a $10 billion opportunity here, and it comes from our belief that 10, 20, 30% of van fleets in urban centers can be replaced by cargo bikes. So if you do the maths, globally you can get to about $10 billion there. I'd say at the moment we are honestly early thousands of cargo vehicles doing commercial delivery across Europe. it's really not a big number. We're really at the start of this, this adoption curve. But we all know that at some point there is that inflection point, and this will really scale. And as I sort of said before, there are certain price points that I think we need to get to. There's regulatory, just bans on cars, etc. need to come in, and some of the teething problems that we see, which are just there are always going to be teething problems with new technology and early adopters. And we talked about servicing before. There is a perception, that cargo bikes brake way more than vans and cars, and they do, but they also don't need to brake as much as they're braking, or they don't need to be down as much as they're down, and that's just because you just need to get someone who knows how to service vehicles to come in and do that for you, and on Adam's side, continually innovate and develop the vehicle so that it breaks down less. Not too much though, otherwise we'll be out of work, mate.
I'll make some rubbish bits for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Before I open it up to questions from the audience, are there any other parts of the puzzle that you guys want to touch on that we haven't yet? Any other major pain points that we haven't discussed? Okay. Any questions from the audience? Coffee's all around for everyone, yes. No questions. You guys have answered every single yes.
Hello, thank you. Whoa, Arnaud Chiro, nice to meet you. Just one point about the trailer. You were speaking about motorized trailer. And as a citizen, a European citizen, and even as professional of the sector, we have to take much care about this topic in the new standard. I mean, in terms of weight, we are speaking about trailers with 600 kilograms, and even on a bike, a four-wheel bike, the safety, we can manage it. We tried it, and we can break half the new standards in terms of braking in safety conditions. But right now on the trailers, there is a really big topic, according to me, because you can fake the sensor system. We see it quite all the time in Paris. And also the length for the braking is going maybe to be set up longer than for other bikes. So as a citizen, for my kids, I don't want this to ride nearby them. So I think we need all to push in the standard in the cycling industry to make something safe in an overall behavior and status. Just
Could completely agree. And it's I have 3 kids myself, and they all love biking. I'm a massive cyclist. I really enjoy being out on a bike, but even my vehicle I feel is as big as it could be. It's too big. And the new weight sort of limits that are going to be up to 600 kilos, I think that's too much. I think it should be half a ton absolute max. But I know it's going to be more because I know everyone's lobbying for more weight. So, but we should be incentivized to make the bikes lighter, not make the overall weight heavier.
I still think though, we were talking about this at Zoomo, if it turns out that these larger cargo form factors or trailers, they just can't use the bicycle lanes, just that that's one part of this equation in cost per drop. There are so many other parts that we talked about before, and again, like we're so close to just it working. We'll go past that point, and again, if that's how it plays out, the equation for cargo bikes will still work. I
think the biggest worry I've got for every manufacturer here is that it's only going to take one major accident and then everything will get legislated again. So no matter how much money I invest or time and effort and fleet operators adopting them, one person has one major accident, it'll all die.
Can I again? It's all about the pink elephant in the room. It's all about those guys over there. Because you are like new in the field, but the space available does not increase. So you have to do a few things to accommodate your things, and they have to get used to the fact that they have no priority anymore. In every serious city, there should be more space for the smaller electric stuff, and maybe less or no space for cars.
In London right now, the average volumetric utilization of a van is under 40%. So the vans aren't being utilized. So the infrastructure space that we apportion to vans is crazy. But the automotive companies are scared. They'll yeah.
But that's
There are some major brands are getting bikes.
Right.
Yeah, like Renault, for example, they are now starting to propose cargo bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if yet. Sorry, I just got to know Renault recently. They just came out with a new collaboration with a brand.
But I think that in general is very important is we're not here to compete against everyday people on bikes. We're here to compete against the cars. And so we don't want to be taking space away or making it more dangerous for everyday cyclists.
Good. Any more?
I just wondered how involved logistics companies are in various EU countries to put in low emission zones and better infrastructure for cargo bikes. Are the logistics companies actually working on policy?
So through CIE, we work with cyclologistics companies, or cyclologistics associations and companies. So we are, I mentioned before, talking about SUMPs, Sustainable Urban Mobility Plans, and a big part of Sustainable Urban Mobility Plans is access restrictions on vehicles, whether that's through policies around emissions or reducing the amount of vehicles, or sort of totally pedestrianizing city centers. That's a topic that's sort of very much within the discussions around sustainable urban mobility planning. And yeah, in terms of cyclologistics associations, I mean, this is something that we do. We're obviously monitoring and trying to sort of, through our work, and what we have been doing is push these SUMPs more and more. As I said before, working towards more integration of urban logistics plans as well, which again would address these topics as well, trying to reduce vehicles in cities, vehicular traffic in cities, and have more light mobility, active mobility, and walking and cycling. So it's one of those things as well where I think, again, on the cyclologistics side of things, it's also down to conversations that happen with local officials too, because it's obviously a local decision that's made to put in place an urban vehicle access restriction, a UVA, and that's always a very contentious decision. So there needs to be a business case there often, and there's it's quite often a topic that has to be raised at the local level, but at the European level there is planning and policy and tools in place to make that happen.
It does come back down to the data as well, captured by manufacturers, operators, and service companies to actually put that triangle together to then give to government to prove why infrastructure should go in. So it's they're not asking for it, but we are giving it to them.
Yeah, this is what I'm trying to get, is a sense of the, do you have a place at the table, or are cargo bikes still sort of like monitoring and trying to get a place at the table with the logistics companies to change legislation? And the sense I'm getting is that you're not quite at the table yet, but
there are some examples that, go ahead.
I'm not sure how, to be fair to the big logistics players, they're trying to electrify their fleets. They're trying to decarbonize their fleets. And they're probably coming at this from a vehicle agnostic perspective. Just what is the vehicle, the electric vehicle that is going to be the lowest cost per delivery? And when you include all of the setup costs and the infrastructure required to operate that fleet, that's what they've got to solve for. Because ultimately, when we're purchasing online, and not everyone is paying an extra couple of dollars for a green delivery, unfortunately, and they've got to solve for that. So I think it's more sort of like our job on the cargo bike industries to basically try and strive for that lowest cost delivery. So the business case stacks up. There is an element, though, of these big logistics players investing some money, as I said, in and taking a leap before, you know, all the numbers do stack up, because that's only going to accelerate, you know, the uptake in the end.
There is an inevitability about this as well. Like, so we're here with a bike with Royal Mail livery on it, for example. They have 48,000 vans in the UK alone, and they're pretty much all of them are diesel. They've got 12,000 depots. If they want to convert those depots to electric car depots, they've got to spend £250,000 to £500,000 per depot to do that electrification. And they do less than 20 miles a day, and they carry less than 1.7 meters cubed. They don't need a van.
Also, largest by turnover of all the delivery companies.
Exactly, yeah. And actually, the goal that they're going for is the lowest CO2 emission. They don't care about, well, they do care about TCO, but actually their major metric is to have the lowest CO2 delivery. That's what they're going for.
And I think it really also depends on the country. I think what we're seeing in some countries, so for example, in France and Paris, obviously with the Olympics next year, there's actually a big push from the local government on these big logistics companies. And so we now have logistics companies coming to us and saying, oh God, we're not going to be able to deliver in the center of Paris for, you know, X amount of weeks. How do we make this happen? So a bit of a push both ways.
Hi, Daniela from Berlin, Germany. Answering the question of the lady, I think at the moment in every country, all the association that connect to cargo bike really try to come together. And in each country, everybody takes the steps to be able to sit down with the politicians. They need to open up. They don't know. They know from the car industry, their metrics. They know what they can expect. This is proven since years. And this is the step the cargo bike industry and the bicycle industry in itself has to be proud standing there and giving all the positive outcomes from cargo bikes to the politicians. But as you said, they need statistics, numbers, facts. That's what they're known. And we have to get a bit more adult. When you think about the cargo bike industry, I don't know, 12 years, 15 years ago, the first cargo bikes, I mean, they were like Harry, Larry, Didi, Dada named, and they were built by, you know, cargo bike fans. And now we are getting mature, and the more mature we get, the more our voice can be heard.
Like that.
And each country is really difficult. But in Berlin, we have had the new government selected, and she was pleading to stop all the lanes that were approved already. And there was a big demonstration with over 15,000 people in Berlin. And then she said, okay, whoa, there's a big force behind that. People really wanted bicycling and cargo bikes. And then she said, okay, out of the 8 we wanted to stop infrastructure, I give open 6 of them and 2 I'm gonna shut down. But we have to talk to the politicians, definitely. So,
and the associations are doing that work as well. I mean, I just saw my Belgian colleagues, and they had the Belgian Minister for Transport at one of their events recently. I know they're in close contact also with the mayor, the transport representative for Brussels as well, Elke Vandenbrand, who's doing a lot as well to sort of take a lead. I think people are often saying that there's a bit of a competition between Paris and Brussels at the moment to sort of reduce car vehicle traffic in cities, and yeah, they you know, these associations, they are sort of the Belgian association. It's a relatively young association. There's an association in Germany, RLDV, and they're in contact, I know, with ministers at the federal and local level. So it is something that is changing, and they have got a seat at the table more and more, definitely.
Any last minute comments? Otherwise, we'll wrap up. Please give a warm round of applause for our panelists, and thank you all for joining in on the conversation.
Thanks, Krysia.
Thank